The night that changed everything. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, music, and memories. The annual music festival had drawn thousands, all eager to experience the magic of live performances under the stars. Families, friends, and strangers alike gathered, united by their love for music. But as the night unfolded, a chilling reality set in. A child had gone missing. The festival grounds, once filled with laughter and excitement, now buzzed with whispers of concern. Security teams scrambled, volunteers scoured every corner, and attendees were asked to keep an eye out. Yet, despite their best efforts, there was no sign of the child. In the midst of the chaos, one detail stood out: a band poster, vibrant and eye-catching, displayed prominently near the main stage. At first glance, it seemed like just another promotional piece. But upon closer inspection, it became clear that this poster was different. It wasn't just advertising a band, it was a clue. The hidden message. The poster featured a popular band known for their cryptic artwork and intricate designs. Among the swirling patterns and bold colors, a subtle detail caught the eye of a sharp observer: a series of numbers and symbols, seemingly out of place. Initially dismissed as part of the band's aesthetic, these markings began to take on new significance. As investigators delved deeper, they discovered that the numbers corresponded to coordinates, a location not far from the festival grounds. Could this be the missing piece of the puzzle? Was the band poster more than just a promotional tool? And if so, what did it mean for the missing child? A community in crisis. The disappearance of a child is every parent's worst nightmare. But in this case, it wasn't just a family affected, it was an entire community. The festival, meant to be a joyous occasion, had turned into a scene of desperation and fear. Volunteers, local authorities, and even festival-goers joined forces, determined to bring the child home. Social media erupted with posts, shares, and hashtags, amplifying the search efforts. News outlets picked up the story, bringing national attention to the case. The community rallied together, united by a common goal: to find the missing child and bring them back safely. The band's role. As the investigation progressed, questions arose about the band's involvement. Were they aware of the hidden message on their poster? Had they intentionally left a clue for someone to find? Or was it all just a coincidence? Interviews with band members revealed conflicting stories. Some claimed ignorance, while others hinted at a deeper connection to the festival organizers. The band's management remained tight-lipped, fueling speculation and intrigue. The turning point. Days passed with no new leads. The community's hope began to wane, but then, a breakthrough came. A local resident, familiar with the area, recognized the coordinates from the poster. They led authorities to a secluded spot in the woods, where, to everyone's relief, the missing child was found, safe, but shaken. The discovery sent waves of relief through the community. But questions remained. How had the child ended up in the woods? Was the band poster truly a clue, or was it just a coincidence? And what did the band's cryptic artwork mean? The aftermath. In the days that followed, the story of the missing child and the mysterious band poster captivated the nation. Media outlets delved into the details, uncovering layers of intrigue and mystery. The band's role in the incident remained a topic of debate, with some praising their subtle involvement and others questioning their motives. The community, though relieved, was left with lingering questions. The incident had brought them together, but it had also exposed cracks in their perception of safety and trust. What had started as a night of celebration had turned into a complex tale of mystery, community, and the power of subtle messages. Conclusion. This story isn't just about a missing child or a band poster. It's about the hidden messages that surround us every day, the signs we overlook, the details we dismiss, and the mysteries waiting to be unraveled. It's a reminder that sometimes, the answers are right in front of us, if only we take the time to look closely. So, what do you think? Was the band poster a deliberate clue, or just a coincidence? And what does this story say about the world we live in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more intriguing stories like this one. The night had unfolded like any other at the annual music festival, a celebration of sound and light that drew thousands from across the country. Families, friends, and strangers gathered under the vast expanse of the night sky, united by their love for music. Among them was 12-year-old Emily, her eyes wide with wonder as she clutched her favorite band's latest album, a gift from her older brother. The air was thick with excitement, the scent of popcorn and cotton candy mingling with the earthy aroma of the grass beneath their feet. Emily's parents, caught up in the rhythm of the crowd, allowed her a moment of independence, a brief respite from their watchful eyes. It was a decision they would come to regret. As the evening progressed, the music grew louder, the lights brighter, and the crowd denser. Emily, eager to get closer to the stage, slipped away, her small frame easily lost among the sea of festival-goers. She had always been adventurous, her curiosity often leading her into situations that tested her parents' patience. But tonight, that same curiosity would lead her into a mystery that no one could have anticipated. Hours passed, and the festival began to wind down. The crowd thinned, the music faded, and the lights dimmed. But Emily was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as her parents searched frantically, asking vendors, volunteers, and fellow attendees if they had seen a young girl with a band t-shirt and a lanyard. The response was always the same: no one had seen her. The festival grounds, once alive with energy, now felt eerily silent, the absence of Emily's laughter a haunting reminder of her disappearance. In the days that followed, the search intensified. Local authorities scoured the area, reviewing security footage, interviewing witnesses, and following up on every lead. But Emily remained missing, and the trail grew colder with each passing day. The community rallied together, organizing search parties and spreading the word through social media. Yet, despite their best efforts, there was no sign of the young girl. Then, a breakthrough came. A local artist, known for his intricate murals and street art, came forward with a startling revelation. He had painted a mural near the festival grounds weeks before the event, a piece depicting a surreal landscape with hidden symbols and messages. Among the swirling patterns and vibrant colors, one symbol stood out: a pair of eyes, subtly integrated into the design. The artist claimed that he had been inspired by the band's album cover, which featured similar imagery. Could this be a clue? Was Emily's disappearance somehow linked to the mural and its hidden messages? The investigation took a new turn as authorities examined the mural and its connection to the band's artwork. Experts in cryptography and symbolism were brought in to decipher the hidden messages, leading to a web of connections that spanned beyond the festival grounds. The mural, it seemed, was not just a piece of art, it was a map, a guide to understanding the events that had transpired. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, a chilling realization emerged. Emily's disappearance was not a random act, it was part of a larger, more complex scheme. The band, the artist, and even some festival organizers were entangled in a web of secrets and lies, each playing a role in the unfolding drama. But the question remained: what was the ultimate goal? And where was Emily? The investigation deepened, uncovering layers of deceit and manipulation. Interviews with band members revealed conflicting stories, with some claiming ignorance of the mural's significance, while others hinted at a deeper involvement. The artist, once seen as a mere bystander, was now considered a key figure in the mystery. His connections to the band and the festival organizers raised more questions than answers. As the story unfolded, the community grappled with the implications of the revelations. Trust was shattered, and suspicions ran high. The once celebrated music festival had become a symbol of betrayal and intrigue, its legacy forever tainted by the events that transpired. But amid the chaos and confusion, a glimmer of hope remained. Emily's family, though devastated by the turn of events, held on to the belief that their daughter was out there, waiting to be found. Their unwavering determination fueled the search, inspiring others to join in the effort. And then, just when it seemed all was lost, a breakthrough came. A cryptic message, hidden within the band's lyrics, provided the final clue needed to locate Emily. The message led investigators to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, where they discovered Emily, unharmed but frightened. The reunion was emotional, a testament to the power of perseverance and the strength of familial bonds. But the mystery didn't end there. The questions remained: who orchestrated the elaborate scheme? What was their motive? And how had they managed to manipulate so many people without detection? As the investigation continued, the answers slowly emerged. The mastermind behind the plot was revealed to be a disgruntled former band member, seeking revenge for being ousted years earlier. Using his knowledge of the band's operations and the festival's logistics, he had orchestrated the entire event, manipulating individuals and events to achieve his goal. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community, leaving many to question the true nature of the music industry and the lengths some would go to achieve their desires. But for Emily and her family, the ordeal was over. They had faced the unimaginable and emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. The story of Emily's disappearance and the hidden messages within the band's artwork serves as a reminder of the complexities of human nature and the depths to which some will go to achieve their ends. It also highlights the importance of vigilance and the need to question the world around us, for sometimes, the answers are hidden in plain sight. As the dust settled and life returned to normal, the community reflected on the events that had transpired. The music festival, once a symbol of joy and unity, had become a cautionary tale, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that the truth is often more complex than it seems. But for Emily and her family, the most important lesson was clear: love and determination can overcome even the darkest of mysteries. And with that, they moved forward, their lives forever changed by the events of that fateful night. The investigation into Emily's disappearance had taken a promising turn with the discovery of the band poster's hidden message, leading authorities to a secluded spot in the woods where she was found safe. However, as the days passed, new challenges emerged that threatened to unravel the progress made. The once clear path to uncovering the truth became obscured by unexpected obstacles, casting doubt on the legitimacy of the findings and raising questions about the true nature of the events that transpired. One of the first setbacks occurred when the mural artist, who had been instrumental in deciphering the hidden symbols, suddenly recanted his statement. In a public interview, he claimed that his earlier assertions were mere speculation and that he had no evidence linking the mural to Emily's disappearance. This reversal not only discredited a key piece of evidence but also sowed confusion among the investigators and the public. Was the mural truly a clue, or had it been a mere coincidence? Adding to the complexity, a series of anonymous letters began to surface, each containing cryptic messages that seemed to reference the case. The letters were postmarked from various locations, making it difficult to trace their origin. Some suggested that Emily's disappearance was part of a larger conspiracy involving influential figures, while others hinted at personal vendettas. The content of the letters varied, but they all shared a common theme: a warning to stop digging deeper into the mystery. The unsettling nature of these communications raised the stakes, making it clear that someone was actively trying to derail the investigation. In the midst of these developments, a new character emerged: Detective Sarah Mitchell. A seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving complex cases, she was assigned to oversee the case, bringing a fresh perspective and a wealth of experience. However, her arrival was met with mixed reactions. Some welcomed her involvement, hoping that her expertise would bring clarity to the situation. Others viewed her presence with suspicion, questioning her motives and whether she had been brought in to steer the investigation away from certain individuals. Detective Mitchell's first action was to review all existing evidence, including the band poster and the artist's mural. She conducted interviews with the key witnesses and re-examined the security footage from the festival. During this process, she uncovered inconsistencies in the initial reports. For instance, a vendor who had been interviewed earlier claimed to have seen Emily near the main stage at a specific time, but upon further questioning, the vendor admitted that they had been mistaken. Such discrepancies cast doubt on the reliability of the evidence and raised concerns about the thoroughness of the initial investigation. As the investigation progressed, it became apparent that someone within the festival's organizing team had a hidden agenda. Subtle hints pointed to a possible cover-up, with certain individuals going to great lengths to obscure the truth. The presence of the anonymous letters and the mural artist's sudden change of heart suggested that there were forces at play trying to manipulate the narrative. But who stood to gain from such actions? The deeper Detective Mitchell delved into the case, the more she uncovered a web of secrets and lies. A pattern began to emerge, linking the festival organizers to questionable activities in the past. Financial irregularities, unreported incidents, and connections to individuals with dubious backgrounds painted a troubling picture. It seemed that the festival, once viewed as a beacon of community and celebration, had darker undercurrents that had been carefully concealed. In a surprising twist, it was revealed that Emily's older brother, Jake, had been involved in a minor altercation with a member of the festival's security team shortly before her disappearance. The incident, which had been dismissed as a misunderstanding at the time, now took on new significance. Was there a connection between Jake's actions and Emily's abduction? Had he inadvertently stumbled upon something he shouldn't have? The revelation prompted a re-examination of the family's dynamics. Emily's parents, previously seen as victims, were now scrutinized for their possible involvement. Were they aware of the tensions surrounding the festival? Had they been complicit in covering up past incidents to protect their daughter? The once clear lines between the innocent and the guilty began to blur, leaving everyone questioning their own assumptions. As the investigation reached its climax, a final piece of evidence surfaced, a recording from a hidden camera placed near the festival grounds. The footage, which had been overlooked in earlier reviews, showed a figure in a hooded cloak meeting with a known associate of the festival's organizers. The conversation, though partially inaudible, contained references to the plan and the girl. The implications were staggering. Had Emily been targeted from the outset? Was her disappearance orchestrated as part of a larger scheme? The discovery of the footage sent shockwaves through the community. The once celebrated festival was now at the center of a scandal that threatened to unravel everything. The authorities faced mounting pressure to uncover the truth and hold those responsible accountable. But as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, a chilling realization dawned. The orchestrators of the plot had anticipated every move, leaving behind just enough evidence to mislead the investigators and keep their true intentions hidden. In the final moments of the investigation, Detective Mitchell received an anonymous tip-off leading her to a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town. Inside, she found a trove of documents detailing the festival's operations, financial transactions, and communications with various stakeholders. Among the papers was a letter addressed to Emily's parents, outlining a plan to remove the obstacle and ensure the success of the event. The letter was signed with a symbol that matched the one found on the band poster. The implications were clear. Emily's disappearance had been a calculated move, orchestrated by those with vested interests in the festival's success. The question now was, who were the masterminds behind the scheme, and what had they hoped to achieve? The answers remained elusive, leaving the community grappling with the aftermath of a tragedy that had been years in the making. As the story concluded, viewers were left with more questions than answers. The mystery of Emily's disappearance had been solved, but the deeper questions about the festival's operations and the individuals involved lingered. The investigation had peeled back the layers of deception, revealing a complex web of motives and actions. But the full extent of the conspiracy remained shrouded in darkness, leaving the audience to ponder the true nature of the events that had transpired. The tale of Emily's ordeal served as a stark reminder of the lengths to which some would go to achieve their goals. It highlighted the importance of vigilance and the need to question the narratives presented to us. In a world where appearances can be deceiving, the truth often lies hidden beneath layers of manipulation and deceit. And sometimes, the most innocuous details, a band poster, a mural, a letter, can hold the key to unraveling the most complex mysteries. Just as the community began to absorb the shock of what had already come to light, with suspicions mounting and trust eroding at every level, a new and deeply unsettling twist took shape, one that threatened to unravel the fragile progress that had been made and plunge the entire case into even deeper uncertainty. It started quietly, almost unnoticed, with an anonymous envelope left at the doorstep of Jake, Emily's older brother. Unlike the vague, cryptic letters that had previously circulated, this one was deliberate and sharp in its message. Inside was a single photograph, grainy and black and white, showing a group of children standing near what appeared to be a backstage area at the festival, but among them was another child no one had ever reported missing. Her face was partially obscured, yet Jake swore he recognized her. An old friend of Emily's from school named Chloe, someone who hadn't been mentioned once during the investigation, not because she had disappeared, but because she had moved away years before after a mysterious incident that had never been fully explained. The image raised an immediate and troubling question: what was Chloe doing at the festival that night, and why had no one seen or heard from her since? When Jake tried to reach out to her family, he discovered that they had left town abruptly the morning after the festival, abandoning their rental property and leaving no forwarding address. Neighbors described the move as sudden and chaotic, with furniture left on the curb and the inside of the home half-packed, as if they were fleeing something. The timing felt too coincidental, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe's reappearance, if that's what it was directly connected to what had happened to Emily. He brought the photo to Detective Mitchell, who immediately launched a parallel inquiry. But before she could make progress, the physical photo vanished. Taken from her locked office, with no sign of forced entry, it was as if someone had been watching and waiting, ready to remove the evidence before it could be traced or analyzed. That act alone changed the tone of the investigation. This was no longer a matter of isolated suspicion or private paranoia. It was now clear that someone, possibly someone with access to law enforcement systems, was actively manipulating the case from within. The possibility that the festival conspiracy was larger than anyone imagined began to feel terrifyingly real. Even Detective Mitchell, normally composed and skeptical, began to question her own team. The breach meant that the suspect pool extended beyond festival staff and performers. Now, city officials, police officers, and even federal consultants assigned to the case came under suspicion. The deeper they dug, the more inconsistencies surfaced: missing files, redacted communications, names on security passes that didn't match employee records, and timestamps on footage that didn't line up with festival schedules. As the layers peeled back, a disturbing pattern emerged. The same symbol from the band poster had appeared before, not just once or twice, but in a series of unsolved cases over the past decade, all tied to public events like festivals, rallies, and concerts. Each time, a young person had gone missing temporarily, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, and each time the case had ended with a miraculous reappearance and no charges filed. The disappearances had been dismissed as accidents, kids wandering off, or custody disputes. But now, viewed through this new lens, they appeared disturbingly deliberate. The implication was staggering: Emily's case might not be an isolated incident at all, but part of a recurring cycle, a pattern that someone had been repeating, undetected, for years. Then came another shock. One of the festival's top event planners, a woman named Lila Carrington, who had helped coordinate backstage access and managed vendor contracts, was found unconscious in her apartment under suspicious circumstances. She had been scheduled to give a follow-up statement to investigators the next day but never showed. When emergency services responded, they found her barely responsive, with signs that pointed to an overdose, but not one involving drugs she was known to use. Her laptop and phone had been wiped clean, and her home security footage had been deleted. Investigators were left with more questions than answers, and the few people close to Lila gave conflicting stories. One friend insisted Lila had recently been paranoid, talking about being followed and not trusting anyone. Another claimed she had no concerns at all and had been acting completely normal just days before. With Lila silenced and Chloe missing again, the investigators were left chasing shadows. What began as a search for a missing child had evolved into something far more complex, a sprawling web of deceit, misdirection, and invisible threats that reached farther than anyone could have predicted. Now Jake found himself at the center of it all, not just as Emily's brother, but as someone who might be holding pieces of the truth others wanted buried. He began receiving text messages from a blocked number, short phrases, chilling in their simplicity. "She wasn't the only one. They knew you were watching. Next time, you won't see it coming." Screenshots didn't work. The texts deleted themselves seconds after opening. Jake showed Detective Mitchell, who immediately placed him under protective surveillance, but even she admitted that whatever they were dealing with wasn't just local, it had the markings of something calculated, organized, and well-funded. As Jake and Mitchell tried to navigate the treacherous waters of these new revelations, a disturbing thought lingered. What if Emily hadn't been the real target at all? What if her disappearance was a distraction from something even more sinister that had been unfolding behind the scenes? And if so, how many others had been sacrificed, manipulated, or erased to protect the truth? Then came a moment that changed everything again. During a quiet night at the police department, one of the junior analysts flagged a frame from the festival surveillance that had been overlooked in earlier reviews. It showed Jake, the night of the festival, standing just behind the barricade near the main stage, but next to him, partially obscured by the crowd, was a person wearing a hoodie identical to the one found in the hidden footage of the cabin meeting. The lighting made it hard to identify the figure, but the timestamp placed them in two locations at the same time. Unless, of course, the person in the hoodie wasn't the same person at all. And just like that, everything viewers thought they knew was shattered again. Because if Jake had an identical double or if someone was impersonating him, then the question wasn't just whether Emily had been targeted. It became something far more personal. Was someone trying to frame Jake? And if so, why? And just as the screen begins to fade, a new envelope arrives. But this time, it's addressed directly to you. The envelope arrived in silence, no knock on the door, no rustle of movement outside, just a pale manila square slipped between the screen door and the frame like it had always belonged there. Jake had barely slept the night before, his mind cycling endlessly through the twisted mess the investigation had become, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't another cryptic photo or coded threat. This time, it was personal. Inside was a printed still from a security camera, his own building's lobby, time-stamped just 2 hours earlier. The grainy image showed him walking out the front door. Only, it wasn't him. The figure wore the same hoodie he kept in his closet, had the same backpack with the frayed shoulder strap, even walked with the same casual lean. But Jake had never left the apartment that night. And if that wasn't him in the photo, then someone was walking around pretending to be him, and they had access to his home. The weight of that realization hit like a punch to the chest. He tore through the apartment, checking windows, closets, vents, anywhere someone might have been or left something behind. Everything looked untouched, but that only made it worse. Whoever this was, they didn't just want to scare him. They wanted him to know they could reach him whenever they wanted. It was a psychological move, cold and calculated, and it worked. The illusion of safety crumbled in that moment. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. Jake was now a piece on someone's board, and the game was far more advanced than he could have imagined. He called Detective Mitchell immediately, his hands trembling as he explained the photo. But before he could finish, the call dropped, just a burst of static and then silence. He tried again, and again, but the phone wouldn't connect. Even worse, his internet was dead. No warning, no outage notice. Just gone. It was too precise to be coincidence. In that chilling stillness, he remembered something Mitchell had warned him about just days ago: if you start seeing coincidences stack up, stop thinking of them as coincidences. Desperate for contact, Jake grabbed his keys and bolted from the apartment, but as he reached the street, he noticed a black sedan parked 2 buildings down. The engine wasn't running, but the driver was still behind the wheel, unmoving, face just visible in the glare of the street lamp. As Jake approached, the car pulled away smoothly, not speeding, just disappearing into the night with eerie calm. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the first time they'd watched him. How long had he been followed? And what did they want him to do or not do? Returning home, he discovered something even worse. His laptop, which he'd shut down before leaving, was open on the coffee table. The screen was lit, a blank document open with a single line typed across it: "Back off. Last warning." There was no sender, no signature, no trace of who had typed it. Jake sat in the center of the room, staring at the screen, his heart pounding. Whoever they were, they had been inside while he was outside. It was now clear they weren't trying to cover their tracks anymore. They were playing with him, toying with his fear, his isolation. And then came the breaking point. That same night, he received a call from his mother. She sounded panicked, her voice cracking as she told him Emily was gone again. Not physically, she was asleep in her room, but something was wrong. She'd woken up screaming about the man in the hallway, crying about a voice whispering under her bed. She kept repeating the same phrase: "He said you're next, Jake." His mom didn't know what to do, and Jake didn't either. Was Emily just traumatized from her abduction, her subconscious leaking out into dreams? Or was this something else, someone deliberately tormenting her, getting to her through her fear, through whatever had happened out in those woods? The emotional weight of that night crushed Jake. He couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. Every sound in the apartment made him jump. He blocked the door with furniture, unplugged every smart device, and sat awake until the sun came up. By morning, nothing had changed except now, he felt hunted. Not just watched or followed, but pursued by something unseen and intelligent. The line between paranoia and reality blurred so completely that he stopped trying to tell the difference. What disturbed him most, though, was that the more he dug, the fewer people he could trust. Even Mitchell seemed to be pulling away. Her texts became vague, her tone distant. She cancelled their next meeting without warning and refused to explain why. When Jake went to the precinct to speak to her directly, he was told she was on administrative leave, and no further information was available. That didn't make sense. She was the lead on the case. She wouldn't just step away unless someone had forced her to. As Jake walked out of the station that afternoon, a memory flashed in his mind from weeks earlier. The man in the hoodie from the surveillance footage, the one who looked like him, had passed behind the main stage at the festival, right before Emily disappeared. But something about his shoes had caught Jake's attention at the time. They were a limited edition release from a pop-up brand that had sponsored one of the festival's underground stages. A brand known for its secrecy and exclusive invite-only merchandise drops. It was a small detail, but now it burned in his brain like a flare. Was this brand just a sponsor, or was it a front for something else? Jake pulled out his phone to search the brand again, but the search bar froze before results could load. Then the screen flickered, and the phone rebooted itself. He stared down at the logo on the boot screen, a familiar symbol now etched into every corner of this mystery. A twisted variation of the same mark found on the band poster, the same one that had been on the envelope, the hidden camera footage, and now, on his own device. At that moment, he understood something chilling. Whatever this was, it didn't end with Emily, or the festival, or the mural, or even the impersonator. This was systemic. Embedded. It was bigger than him. Bigger than any single person. And the closer he got to the truth, the more it seemed to slip away, replaced by layers of misdirection, manipulation, and danger that now closed in on him from every side. But nothing prepared him for what came next. That evening, while reviewing old photos from the festival crowd, hoping for a missed clue, he saw something that stopped his breath. A reflection in a mirror behind one of the food stands, a face he knew. Not someone random. Not a stranger. Someone close. Someone who should never have been there. And as he zoomed in, Jake's hands began to shake uncontrollably. Because the person in that reflection wasn't just part of the crowd. They were the one holding Emily's hand. The world around Jake seemed to collapse in on itself when the truth finally began to emerge, a truth that shook the foundation of everything he thought he knew. He had been running in circles, chasing shadows and cryptic clues that only seemed to lead him deeper into a labyrinth of deceit. But it wasn't until the moment he stood face to face with someone he trusted, someone who had always been a silent ally, that the entire narrative shattered like glass, revealing a terrifying new reality. It was late one evening when he received a call from Lila Carrington, the event planner who had mysteriously disappeared after the festival. Her voice was strained, barely recognizable, but it was unmistakably hers. She spoke in hushed tones, as though the walls themselves had ears. "Jake, you need to stop looking into this," she said, her words dripping with urgency. "They're watching you. You don't know what you're getting into." He was about to ask what she meant when she cut him off. "There's no turning back once you've seen what's really going on." For a moment, the air in his apartment felt thick, as if the walls themselves were pressing in on him. He wanted to shout, to demand answers from her, but something in her voice stopped him. It was fear. Genuine, raw fear. And the deeper she spoke, the more Jake began to realize something he had been too blind to see before. Everything, every clue, every dead end, every mysterious warning had been leading him in the wrong direction. Emily's disappearance wasn't the catalyst, it was the cover-up. Lila had been a part of it all along. The festival, the strange symbols, the connections to powerful, untouchable figures, they were all part of a much darker and more sinister operation that had been running for years, right under the public's nose. As Lila continued, her words spilled out in a rushed torrent of half-formed sentences. "It was never about the festival. It was never about Emily. It's about something bigger. We were all pawns in a game we didn't understand. You were never meant to uncover it, Jake. The final pieces clicked into place as Lila confessed that the festival, the artists, the mysterious symbols, and even the hidden messages on the band poster were all part of a much larger scheme, one that used these public spectacles to launder money, conceal illegal activities, and manipulate public perception. The people behind it were far more powerful than anyone had ever suspected, and they had a hand in every facet of the investigation, keeping the authorities in check, influencing the media, and silencing those who dared to dig too deeply. And Emily? She had been a target, but not for the reasons Jake thought. She was a pawn, just like him, swept up in a game much darker than either of them had ever realized. In the midst of her hurried confession, a loud crash echoed through Lila's end of the line, and then the call abruptly cut off. The sudden silence on the other end of the phone made Jake's blood run cold. His phone screen flickered, and then it went dark. He tried to reboot it, but nothing happened. He grabbed his jacket and ran out the door, racing to her apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. Every step felt heavier, like the ground itself was pushing back against him, warning him to stop. But Jake couldn't stop. Not now. He had to know the truth. When he arrived at Lila's apartment building, the door was ajar. Inside, the apartment was eerily still, the faint smell of something burning in the air. He moved quickly through the dimly lit hallway, each step echoing in the silence. In the living room, he found the place in disarray, papers scattered, books thrown to the floor, and the unmistakable scent of burnt paper. On the table, however, there was something that caught his eye, a folder, half open, revealing a series of photographs. As he flipped through them, his blood froze. The images were from the festival, yes, but they weren't the images of Emily that he had seen in the media or from his own frantic search. These were different, closer, personal. In one, a man with a face he didn't recognize was standing next to Emily, his hand on her shoulder, smiling with an expression that seemed too rehearsed, too cold. Another photo showed the same man in the background, standing next to Lila, and in the next, Jake noticed something even more chilling. The same symbol, the twisted logo that had appeared on the band poster, was tattooed on his wrist. The man wasn't just a random festival attendee or employee. He was someone deep inside the circle, someone who had been orchestrating this entire charade. Jake's hands shook as he looked at the final photo, a shot of Lila standing in front of an unknown building, with a shadowy figure standing just behind her. The man had his back turned, but the image was enough to make Jake's blood run cold. It was the same figure from the hooded surveillance footage, the one he had seen in the crowd, the one who had been following him. It all clicked. Lila had been part of the operation. She had been placed there to lead him down a false path, to manipulate him into uncovering pieces of a puzzle that would only push him closer to the danger she herself was involved in. The entire time, she had been feeding him just enough to keep him hooked, to keep him digging deeper while the real answers slipped further out of reach. She was playing him, just as she had played everyone else. But then, a sound shattered his thoughts. The door creaked behind him. He spun around, heart racing, but no one was there. The hallway was empty. The air felt thick with the weight of unseen eyes, watching, waiting. He turned back to the folder, his mind reeling. What was this all leading to? Who was really behind everything? And why had they let him get so close to the truth? The questions piled up faster than he could answer them, and yet there was no time for answers. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to run before he became another casualty in a game much bigger than he could comprehend. But as Jake backed away from the table, a faint, mocking voice echoed through his mind. They let you get this far. You were always meant to find out. With every step he took, every breath he drew, Jake felt the walls closing in. The mystery of Emily's disappearance was no longer the point. There was something far more sinister at play, and now it wasn't just about solving a case. It was about survival. The people behind this had seen his every move, and they weren't done with him yet. Jake sat in his car, the engine idling in the parking lot of a small, run-down diner on the outskirts of town. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and his eyes darted back and forth, scanning the darkened windows, searching for any sign of movement, any hint that someone was watching him. For the first time in what felt like forever, he couldn't breathe. He had to make a choice, one he never thought he'd have to make, and it was a choice that would either shatter what little was left of his life or throw him deeper into the nightmare that had already consumed his every waking moment. The decision wasn't about what was right or wrong. It was about survival. He had learned that the hard way. He knew what the folder had meant now. Lila had been working for them all along. Every clue she'd given him, every conversation they'd had, was designed to lead him to this point. She had manipulated him, played him like a pawn, but there was something more to it now. Something that made the air feel heavier than it ever had. Lila wasn't just a part of this twisted game, she was the one who had been guiding him to the truth, or rather, to the edge of it, where the real danger lay. She wasn't afraid of them. She feared what they would do if he uncovered the whole truth. And that's why she made him that call. To warn him, to beg him to stop, to try and save him from what was coming. But the problem was, Jake couldn't stop. Not now. Not when everything he had worked for, everything that had ever mattered to him, was hanging in the balance. He stared at his phone screen, the last message he'd received blinking back at him, "Meet me at 10. Don't bring anyone." The message was from a number he didn't recognize, but he knew who it was. His gut told him it was the same person who had been orchestrating everything from the shadows. The same people who had been following him, watching his every move, controlling the pieces. He had to go. He didn't know who else to trust, but he knew that he couldn't back down. The truth was too close. His sister, Emily, had disappeared into that chaos, and now everything had spiraled out of control, with the consequences of his pursuit becoming more and more terrifying by the hour. But then there was his mother. He had promised her he would protect Emily, that he would bring her back, that everything would be okay. He couldn't tell her that everything he thought he knew was a lie. She didn't know the full extent of what was happening. She didn't know that Lila had been part of the operation. She didn't know that the person behind all of this might have been someone even closer than Jake was willing to admit. The thought of facing her now, after everything that had happened, felt like an impossible burden. How could he look her in the eyes and tell her that the truth he was chasing was more dangerous than she could ever understand? How could he possibly explain that the world they knew, the world they had been trying to protect, had already slipped out of their grasp? He thought about calling her, explaining everything, but he knew that would only put her in danger. He had already put her through too much. And yet, the thought of keeping the truth from her, of letting her continue to live in the dark, felt like betrayal. The weight of that choice, the choice between keeping her safe and protecting her from the horror he was walking into, or telling her the truth and risking everything, pressed on him like a stone. He couldn't even make sense of it. There was no right answer, no easy way out. It was a decision that would haunt him no matter which path he chose. And then, in the midst of his spiraling thoughts, there was a knock on the car window. He froze, his heart skipping a beat. The last thing he expected was someone to approach him out here. He slowly turned his head, and there stood Lila, her face pale, her eyes wide and fearful. The shock of seeing her, of realizing that she had somehow found him, threw him off balance. She shouldn't have been here. She shouldn't have come. He had made it clear to her that he was done, he was going to confront whoever was behind this, no matter the cost. But Lila's presence now made everything more complicated, more urgent. She had become a symbol of the broken trust between them, of the lies they had both told. And yet, seeing her now felt like a reminder of the stakes they were both trapped in. "Jake," she said, her voice shaky, almost pleading. "You can't go. Not tonight. You don't understand what you're walking into." The desperation in her voice was enough to make him hesitate. He could see the fear in her eyes, fear not just for him, but for herself as well. She had been part of this all along, but now she was scared. She was terrified of the people she had been working for. Jake could feel the weight of that fear pressing down on him, and for a moment, he almost asked her why she had done it. Why she had dragged him into this nightmare. But the question felt irrelevant now. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about getting Emily back, about unraveling the mystery, about surviving whatever it was that was coming for them both. "You need to get out of here, Jake," Lila continued, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "They're already on to you. They've been watching you this entire time. If you go tonight, if you do this, you're not just putting yourself in danger. You're putting everyone around you in danger." Jake's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. This was the ultimatum he'd been avoiding, the choice he had been pushing away for so long. He had to decide, was the truth worth it? Was it worth sacrificing his safety, his family, everything he knew, just to uncover a story that might never see the light of day? Was the cost of finding out what had happened to Emily too high? "Why didn't you tell me before?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. "Why didn't you stop me when you knew how deep this went? Why did you let me go on this path?" Lila's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, Jake saw the vulnerability behind the cold exterior she had shown him all this time. "Because I didn't know how else to help you. I couldn't protect you from them. I still can't." She wiped her eyes, her voice breaking. "But you can stop now. You can walk away, and maybe we can both survive this. Please, Jake. Please, I'm begging you." Jake felt the weight of the choice settle over him like a cloud. It was one thing to chase the truth, to put everything on the line for the sake of justice. But this was different. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about his own survival, about protecting the people he loved from something that was bigger and darker than any of them could have imagined. He wanted to believe that he could still find the answers, that there was a way out, that he could fix everything. But deep down, Jake knew that some truths were too dangerous to know, and some choices had consequences that could never be undone. The world felt smaller now. The walls were closing in, and Jake was standing at the precipice of everything he had worked for, everything he had fought for. And with that, he knew that no matter what choice he made tonight, there was no going back. Jake's pulse hammered in his ears as he stood in the dim glow of the diner's flickering neon sign, staring at Lila, who was now pacing back and forth in front of him. Her anxiety was palpable, her every movement tight, like she was on the verge of breaking. There was something in the way she was acting, something off about her eyes, that sent a fresh wave of dread surging through him. For the first time, he realized that he might have been blind to everything she'd been hiding all along. "You don't understand," Lila said, her voice shaking. "This isn't just about Emily. It never was. It's about a whole network. It's bigger than anything you're imagining. There are people, powerful people, who have been pulling the strings for years. You've been walking right into their trap, Jake. And now you're too close to the truth." Jake's heart stopped in his chest. He thought he had been piecing things together, but this was something else entirely. The idea that this wasn't just some isolated conspiracy, that it wasn't just about his sister or the music festival, it made everything feel like a house of cards ready to collapse. He took a step forward, but Lila grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his skin. "Please, Jake, you have to listen," she whispered urgently, her eyes darting nervously over his shoulder. "They're already on to you. I shouldn't have come here." She paused, swallowing hard, and then, as if she'd made a decision, she looked him dead in the eye. "They'll stop at nothing to keep this quiet. They have people everywhere. In law enforcement. In the media. In the government. The festival was just a cover. It was never about the music, about Emily, none of it. They've been using these events, these distractions, to launder money, to cover up a massive operation that involves trafficking, blackmail, and illegal arms deals. It's been going on for years, and you've been right in the middle of it." Jake felt the ground beneath him shift, like he was standing on unstable ground that could crack open at any moment. The magnitude of what Lila was saying was almost too much to process. This wasn't just some shady organization, it was a full-blown, far-reaching criminal syndicate. They had been hiding in plain sight, manipulating the public's trust, using events like the festival to carry out their activities, covering their tracks with every new scandal, every distraction. Before Jake could even process the weight of her words, he felt a chill crawl up his spine. He instinctively turned, his eyes scanning the shadows of the diner's parking lot. A figure was moving toward him, walking with purpose, his outline too familiar to be coincidental. Jake froze as recognition hit him like a punch to the gut. It was Detective Harris, the one man he had trusted above all others in this investigation. The man who had been feeding him information, the one who had been working tirelessly to help him find Emily. Except now, as Harris stepped closer, Jake realized something he hadn't been willing to admit before. The detective was no longer the ally he thought he was. "Jake," Harris said, his tone cold, detached. "You need to come with me. It's over." There was a finality in his voice that Jake couldn't ignore. It wasn't the voice of someone offering help, it was the voice of someone who had already made up their mind. Jake's blood ran cold as the realization hit him. Harris wasn't trying to help him. He had been working with them all along. The clues Harris had given him were nothing more than breadcrumbs meant to keep him in the dark, to lead him deeper into the web of lies. The detective wasn't interested in justice, he was part of the system that was protecting the people who had been pulling the strings all along. "Jake," Lila said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she could sense the change in the air. "He's one of them. He's been working with them from the start." The words hit Jake like a slap, but there was no time to process them. Harris stepped forward, his hand moving toward his sidearm, his eyes never leaving Jake. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. Lila's face was pale, a mixture of fear and regret playing across her features, and for a moment, Jake wasn't sure whether she was scared of Harris or of what he was about to do next. He had been betrayed again. The walls were closing in on him, and there was no one he could trust. Not Lila. Not Harris. Not anyone. "Move, Jake," Harris said, his voice now more forceful, as he took another step closer. Lila's hand shot out, gripping Jake's arm tightly. "No," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You don't have to do this. You have to believe me. There's so much more going on here than you realize. If you go with him, you'll never make it out of this alive." Jake felt the weight of her words, but he didn't know how much longer he could stay there. He was cornered. Harris had blocked off the exit, and the diner was isolated, miles from anywhere he could get help. It was him against them, and he didn't have the luxury of time to figure out the right move. Without thinking, Jake bolted, pushing Lila to the side and running toward the back of the diner. He didn't look back, even as the sound of Harris's heavy footsteps followed him. His heart raced, his legs pumping with adrenaline as he darted between the cars, his mind spinning. He needed answers. He needed to figure out who was behind this and how to stop them before they destroyed everything he cared about. But just as he reached the edge of the parking lot, he saw something that made his stomach drop. A black van, parked on the street, its engine idling. It wasn't just any van, it was the same one that had been following him for days, the one that had been parked outside his apartment. Jake froze, realizing too late that it wasn't just the detective who was after him. They had been waiting for this moment, anticipating his every move, setting up the perfect trap. He had walked right into it. The van's sliding door opened, and two men stepped out, their faces hidden behind masks. The men didn't have to speak. The threat was clear in their eyes, the same ones that had watched him for days, the same ones who had been pulling the strings from the shadows. Jake felt the panic surge in his chest as the cold realization washed over him. He was too far gone now. There was no way out. Not unless he was willing to give up everything, to walk away from the truth, to walk away from the people who had been hurt because of this. But if he did that, would he ever be able to live with himself? Could he live knowing that the people who had caused all of this would keep doing it to others? He was about to find out. Because the choice he had to make wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fighting back against a system that had been rigged from the start, a system that had stolen lives and hidden the truth for far too long. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined, and he didn't know how much longer he could keep running. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted through the dense forest, the underbrush catching at his legs, the sound of footsteps behind him growing louder. He couldn't outrun them. He knew that. The van, the two men in masks, and Detective Harris, all of them were closing in. But he had no choice. He couldn't stop. The truth was just ahead, just within his reach. He could feel it burning at the back of his mind, pushing him forward, past the fear and the chaos. This was it. The moment he had been racing toward, the moment where everything would either collapse or come together. The moonlight broke through the canopy of trees in scattered patches, illuminating the trail just enough for Jake to see the next few steps ahead. His breath was ragged, his body aching from the sprint, but his focus was sharp, cutting through the terror that had taken hold of him. The woods felt suffocating, as though the trees themselves were closing in, but he had to keep moving. If he could just make it to the cabin, the one Lila had mentioned in passing, he could finally uncover the truth. The last piece of the puzzle, the final clue, lay inside. He could feel it in his bones. His mind raced, pulling together fragments of the mystery he'd uncovered over the last few days: the music festival, the strange poster, the missing people, Lila's cryptic warnings, the betrayal by Harris. It had all pointed toward this. Everything tied back to that one location, that hidden place where the conspiracy began. A place where the people pulling the strings operated in the shadows, where everything from arms deals to human trafficking had been covered up. The scale of it was far beyond what Jake had imagined when he first started this. But now, he was here. He was about to face the mastermind behind it all. And he didn't know if he was prepared for what that might mean. The sound of the van's engine rumbled faintly in the distance, but it was too far now. He had outpaced them, barely. Jake didn't dare slow down, not even to catch his breath. He couldn't afford to be caught. Not when everything had come down to this. He pushed through the underbrush, his hands scraping against branches, his feet slipping on wet soil as he reached the clearing. The cabin loomed ahead, its silhouette dark against the night sky. He didn't hesitate. Every instinct screamed at him to keep going. The truth was waiting inside. As he reached the door, he paused, scanning the area. No sign of pursuit yet, but he could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, like a storm ready to break. His hand shook as he reached for the door handle, pushing it open with a creak that sounded far too loud in the silence of the woods. He stepped inside, the smell of mildew and old wood overwhelming him. The faint glow of a single bulb above the door illuminated the room just enough to reveal stacks of old files, papers scattered across a table, and an assortment of discarded equipment. Jake stepped further in, his eyes scanning the room. It was a mess, organized chaos, like someone had been working here frantically. And then, in the far corner, he saw it. A small metal chest, half hidden beneath a pile of dirty tarps. His heart skipped a beat. He rushed toward it, his hands trembling as he fumbled for the lock. He knew this was it. This was the moment that everything would fall into place. He could feel the weight of the past few days pressing down on him, the years of manipulation and deception culminating in this one, single moment. The lock clicked open, and Jake pulled the chest toward him, his fingers clawing at the edges. Inside, there were dozens of photographs, some of them blurry, others more clear, but all of them featuring the same few faces, the same group of people. And then he saw it. A photo that sent ice through his veins. Lila. She was standing there, right in the middle of the photo, with a man who looked vaguely familiar, a man Jake recognized from a previous meeting. The same man who had been part of the festival. The same man whose presence had seemed out of place. But the most shocking part wasn't just the photo, it was the date on the back. The same date as the night his sister had gone missing. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. Lila wasn't just a victim. She wasn't just a pawn in this twisted game. She was part of it. The dust had barely settled when Jake sat at the edge of the old cabin's porch, his legs hanging loosely over the side as he watched the sunrise filter through the trees. The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth, but everything felt different now. Everything had changed. The officers, led by Detective Simmons, had taken Lila and Harris into custody. Their smug faces, once filled with confidence, now seemed hollow, almost defeated. The truth had come crashing down, and the pieces of the vast conspiracy were finally being pulled apart, but the weight of it all still pressed heavily on Jake's chest. He had uncovered the layers of darkness, the trafficking, the betrayal, and the manipulation, but it had come at such a cost. His sister, Emily, was still missing. The body they had found at the festival turned out to be a decoy, a ploy to throw him off the scent. The feeling of defeat he had carried around for so long hadn't lifted, not entirely. It was like trying to outrun a storm that was always just behind him, waiting to strike. Jake could hear the sound of voices behind him, the officers talking among themselves, the shuffle of feet, and the occasional clink of handcuffs. But he didn't turn around. He didn't need to see the faces of the people who had brought the truth to light. He needed to process what had just happened, to figure out where he went from here. He thought of Lila, how everything he had believed about her had been shattered in an instant. She had been so close, so convincing. He had trusted her with everything, his suspicions, his fears, his emotions. But she had played him from the start. She wasn't just a victim of the conspiracy. She had been an architect of it. The revelation about her connection to Harris, the way she had manipulated him into following her lead, had been the final blow. But as the shock of it all began to wear off, Jake couldn't help but wonder if there had been more to her story than he realized. Had she been as trapped as she said she was? Or had she truly been working for the people behind it all from the very beginning? The sirens had long faded, and the officers were now gathering the evidence that would put the remaining pieces of the conspiracy together. They were still piecing it together, still digging deeper, but Jake felt, for the first time in weeks, like he could breathe again. The nightmare wasn't over, but it had taken a step back. There was still a long road ahead, and the truth about Emily's disappearance was still out there, lingering like an open wound. But for now, there was a sense of finality in the air, a sense that maybe, just maybe, things would start to make sense again. As Jake sat there, lost in his thoughts, Detective Simmons approached him quietly, sitting down next to him on the porch without saying a word. They sat there in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between them. Jake could feel Simmons' gaze on him, but he didn't look up. Not yet. After everything that had transpired, after the months of false leads and dark alleys, the endless nights of chasing shadows, the relief of finally uncovering the truth seemed almost too much to bear. He had come so close to losing himself in it all. "You did good, kid," Simmons said finally, his voice rough but sincere. "You didn't give up. A lot of people would have walked away long before you ever got this far." Jake shook his head, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "But I didn't save her, Simmons. Emily's still out there. And I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for that." Simmons was quiet for a moment, his eyes scanning the vast stretch of forest in front of them. "You can't save everyone, Jake. And sometimes, the hardest part of the fight is knowing when to walk away. But you kept going when no one else would. You exposed them. And that matters." Jake felt the truth in Simmons' words, but it didn't take away the aching emptiness that had taken root in his chest. He had gotten so close, closer than anyone else had, but Emily was still out there somewhere. And the question remained, was she still alive? Or had they erased her like they had erased so many others? Just then, a voice called from behind them. Jake turned to see one of the officers walking toward him, a piece of paper in hand. The officer's expression was serious, his movements deliberate as he handed Jake the paper. For a split second, Jake thought it was another report, another dead end, but as he unfolded it, his eyes widened. It was a picture, Emily's picture. But the address written on the back was the real shock. It wasn't just a random location. It was somewhere Jake had never thought to look. The image was grainy, showing Emily from behind, but there was no mistaking her. And the place was a warehouse, located on the outskirts of the city, one that Jake knew too well. His heart began to race. The same place he had driven past so many times, never thinking it was more than an abandoned building, a leftover relic from the past. But now, it felt like the final key had just fallen into place. The door had been cracked open, and Emily was somewhere behind it. Jake's fingers trembled as he looked at the officer, who simply nodded, his expression grim. "We thought you'd want to know. We'll be moving out soon. We'll get her back, Jake. We won't stop until we do." For the first time in what felt like forever, Jake felt the smallest glimmer of hope. It wasn't a promise that everything would be all right, or that he would get the closure he so desperately craved. But it was a start. A chance. And that was enough. As he stood up, the officers behind him continuing their work, Jake turned to Simmons, his eyes burning with determination. "I'm going after her. I'm going to find her, no matter what it takes." Simmons gave him a small nod. "You don't have to do it alone. We're with you, Jake. We'll finish this." But as Jake walked away, heading toward the vehicle that would take him to that warehouse, a cold feeling washed over him. The story wasn't finished. The conspiracy was still alive, its roots buried deep, and no matter how much they uncovered, no matter how many people they arrested, Jake knew that he would never truly escape it. It would always linger, just out of sight, waiting for the next crack in the foundation. As he looked back once more, he couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. The van pulled away, heading toward the unknown, and as the trees swallowed them up, the lingering question that remained was simple. How far would they go to stop him from finding the truth?